before, and he was telling me that he's seen you perform down in Watsonville. I think maybe supporting a supporter for the Brown Berets, man. Bro, can you elaborate on that? Do you remember that?
No, I'll tell you about that. The Brown Berets, the Watsonville Brown Beret chapter specifically, contacted me one time. I forget whether it was through ViperRecords.com. I think they sent an email there. But I befriended a bunch of the people. Big shout out to the people who ran that program and run it now.
Yeah,
but they were doing like these teachings where they would educate people about their rights, about how to interact with police. You know what I mean? They're very, very, very honest. You know, like, listen, you know, I understand that, you know, you wanna have pride. It's not about putting your head down and saying yes sir or acting like a slave. But if you're riding dirty, you should probably shut the fuck up, my friend. Like, they just were
exactly.
They were very honest with the kids. Like, listen, you know what I mean? Like, you have to be very careful so that you don't end up getting yourself killed for no reason. Like, we need you in this fight. Like, we talked about the imagery and the culture of what gangs were before they broke down into a dysfunctional unit that just is sort of a capitalist machine in a small sense, and what they used to represent for the community when they had to defend themselves from people who were trying to be prejudiced against them and hurt them, as opposed to what they became or what they sort of de-evolved to. Not all of them. Some organizations are trying to revert back, but I think by and large, we had a lot of these very interesting conversations about what it actually means to be quote-unquote Latino or indigenous, or how people shouldn't be afraid to speak Spanish even if they don't speak it perfectly, because no one speaks it perfectly. Even people from Spain speak with a lisp from the 16th century. So it's like, look, dude, don't be afraid. The only thing you should be afraid of is not trying to learn your culture, to learn things about where you come from. So they asked me to come perform there and then do workshops with the kids. So I would just come by there whenever I had a show in anywhere in Santa Cruz or in Oakland or in San Francisco or something, and I would have something between there, and I would always do somewhere in the middle of California on the way up. So I would do either Fresno or San Luis Obispo, and I would pop up there, and then I would just stop by Watsonville on the way to the Bay. And they treated me like a brother. Like, they treated me like a member of the family. They would cook big-ass meals. And you know what? Even though we didn't have a lot of money, we had a lot of heart. We had a lot of unity. And we did a lot of really good things. I don't want to blow people up, but I'll put it this way, brother. We had people from the north, people wearing red, and people wearing blue in the same goddamn room one time.
Yep.
Because of those things. And maybe that's insignificant to people who don't understand and don't come from that life, but that's a huge deal to people who understand what I'm talking about. To have Sureño, Norteño have a conversation with each other, to declare peace for a moment so that we can have a conversation about what the future of our children could potentially be. Like that, I put it this way, someone on either side could probably get in trouble from one of the OGs for having the meeting, but they felt like it was necessary for them to say, hey, listen, can we make sure that this right here, this space is sacred so people don't bang here or people don't hustle here? That's it. Whatever, we can't afford to destroy the lives of 9- and 10-year-old children. Because also what needed to be discussed was, if we recruit people into organizations using the imagery of indigenous culture, then what responsibility do we have to that indigenous culture? Because if all we're doing is using it to get people to work for you so they can make money doing God knows what, then what makes you different from Walmart or Kmart, or what makes you different from those fucking the strawberry fields and the people who have slave labor for the orange juice that people have? Then how you treat your own people like a slave? You have to really know the culture and respect it for you to really live it like that. So what I must say is that people from the north and people from the south, that they did call up OGs eventually, and they made peace on that, you know. And there were a couple of times where things were shaky because of there may have been one incident or two, or some nonsense. It was always over drugs or something, drugs and alcohol. That's what obviously led to a lot of these escalating things as well. But I really appreciate that time I had in Watsonville, because I was able to do things like that. I was able to talk to people who felt like they didn't have anybody, or like they were being ignored, like their culture wasn't worth anything. They felt like they needed to assimilate and get rid and renounce their culture, when in reality they could appreciate their culture and learn English at the same time. You know what I mean? That was the message. You can learn everything about America without losing who you are. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to, acknowledge, to take pride in where your ancestors came from, so you have knowledge of self, and you don't need someone else to tell you who you are. Oh, I know all about you and your people. You used to. Actually, let me stop you right there, because you're not allowed to do that. You don't know me or my people. I know me or my people. So irrespective if you are from anywhere in the world, I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're black. I don't care if you're brown, red, yellow. When people say to you, I know all about you and your people, and you can say, hey, you know what? Actually, I'm from Russia. You don't know nothing about me. I'll tell you about me. Or, you don't know nothing about me. I'm from Brazil. I'll tell you about Brazil. I'll tell you about. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, some people are going to get a little bit of pride because of where they're from, and maybe, some things will be aggrandized. But the one thing that won't happen is that you won't be able to just marginalize somebody who's knowledgeable of where they come from. You won't be able just to say, okay, I can tell you all about yourself, because the other thing we did was teach American history in there as well, because I said it's important for you not to just know your own history, but you got to know America's history better than American people. Like when they tell you about smoking weed, why don't you ask them, then how come the first American flag was made out of hemp? How come you had to grow that legally? You legally had to grow hemp on your property.
Right.
Why? It was cheaper than the British cotton. It lasted longer than the cotton factories that we decided to then use. So all of these things that existed, all of these things that had a place in our society. The first person to get killed over America, Crispus Attucks, a black man with a Latin name. Come on, fam. What are we talking about here? I mean, this is history. This is proof that at some point we had the opportunity to make America into what it should have been. And think about it. Imagine if that's really what it was on paper. Imagine if every single person from Ireland, from Ghana, from Vietnam, from South Africa, from fucking Dominican Republic, from Poland came here and they got treated exactly the same. Imagine how beautiful this country really would be. But the reason that never happened was because you decided to build this country with slave labor. And the moment somebody stepped off that boat to come here to this side of the world, they were stepping on land that was stolen from indigenous people. And at least if you want, maybe I'm not asking people to leave their home. Don't be a cynical asshole just because someone's telling you some truth. I'm telling you, the only thing you have to do is be conscientious of this and to say, okay, I acknowledge that. And all right, then if we want to play this narrative, then let's have a historical reality that goes along with it. Columbus was a slave trader. Columbus enslaved young girls as young as 9 years old from the indigenous tribes that he conquered in those regions for the purpose of sexual slavery. Do you know what that means? That means he was a child molester and a rapist and a slaver. There's a fucking Italian dude who's making pizza in Brooklyn right now, who's a better example of an Italian, who's a better example of a Christian, and who's a better example of a European person than anything Christopher Columbus was. So we don't want people to hate themselves. We don't want people to hate their heritage. We just want them to realize how many lies they've been told by an establishment that was trying to justify the profit margin of imperialism to them first, because that's the first people they had to sell it to, unfortunately. European people.